Welcome back to the Mini Thrive On Demand series. This is episode 2, the language layer. Okay, so there's a scene in the BBC series Sherlock where Mycroft, Sherlock's older brother, finds Sherlock being interrogated in a room where he's been pretending to speak Serbian, or only Serbian. He's pretending to be a Serb. And he's being interrogated and beaten up by this guy. Anyway, so he says some things to the man, and the man leaves, and Mycroft tells his brother it's time to come home. He says this in Serbian as well. Then, almost as a side joke, he mentions, as they're talking, Mycroft mentions that he picked up Serbian himself in just a few days, using linguistic techniques to learn it quickly. Now, Sherlock mentions it took, kind of like it took you that long, you're slipping. Anyway, I have no idea whether it is actually possible to learn a language in just a few days, but I suspect that many of us who have moved to a new country have met someone who seems to have some kind of cheat code for language learning. Maybe they arrived after us and they're already speaking fluently, and they make it look effortless while we are still struggling after months or sometimes even years of trying. The truth is that the vast majority of people need a while, several months, even years, before they feel comfortable even in simple conversations in a new language. Here in Sweden, you have the government funding options like the Swedish för invandrare, or Swedish for immigrants, SFI as it's known, or you have private tutors and private schools. And still people struggle. I don't think that the problem is that people are bad at language learning or that they're not trying. I think the problem is that for many people, they don't have the time, energy, or mental space to absorb a new language on top of everything else that life is demanding of them in this new season. And that exhaustion without seeing good results can lead to demotivation. Of course, if you're an English speaker and English is available as an easier option, it is very tempting to just lean on English and stop trying. Even other languages. I had some friends, German-speaking friends, who've come here for a year, and because one, it's only a year in their estimation, and that after a while they start to understand what people are saying because they know German and English, and so they can understand many of the Swedish words once their ears are tuned to the language. They just decide to stop learning German. Because is it really worth it? And I don't think it's just because it's a year. It's because it takes a lot of time. The demand on you to learn a new language is quite high. This episode is about that demotivation, why it happens, and what can help. Okay, so let's go back in time to when I was about a teenager in school. In my school, you had to do a foreign language, and the choices were Spanish and French. And we did Spanish and French, or I did Spanish and French for the first 2 years of secondary school, and then I switched to Spanish only. 5 years of Spanish, and I failed almost every test I took until 5th form. So first form to 5th form, I failed almost every test. And by the time I reached 5th form, the final year before what we call our Caribbean examination, council exam at CXC, I would take 8 subjects that year. And just for context, this is an exam done throughout the English-speaking Caribbean. My Spanish teacher quietly suggested that I sit the basic instead of the general exam. And just to give you context, the basic sort of exists for students who need to show that they've done the subject but are unlikely to pass at the general level. You have a basic understanding, but you don't have this higher level that they want people to attain in these subjects, right? And I have to tell you the truth, I was not offended. Because when was I going to use Spanish in my life? I thought as a child, as a teenager. And so I hadn't been excelling at it. Just take some pressure off and do the basic, right? Why not? But then my mother had other ideas. She sent me to a private tutor, a man. She was a teacher, and so this man was a teacher at her school. And he taught Spanish lessons outside of school using a textbook written for French speakers. So there was French in the book, a little bit, and there was Spanish in the book. There was no English anywhere. And he refused to use English with our group. I think he did at the very beginning while my mother was still in the room. And then of one or two instances at the very start of the first lesson, and then he didn't use English again. He would take his time and explain stuff in Spanish to us rather than switching to English. And it could take a while, but it worked. He told me later on that he had been worried about me when we first started because he guaranteed his students a good pass at the CXC general exam. And when I first started, he was not sure I could pass at all, especially compared to the other three ladies in the class. In the end, when we did the exam, I got the highest mark of the four of us. My ability didn't change. I was the same person. The environment changed. And I think my motivation changed as well. For 2 hours I think it was twice a week maybe, I had no choice but to operate in Spanish. My brain couldn't use English as a shortcut, but it was a short space of time. It wasn't the whole day, you know. When the lesson was ended, I could just go back to English and go home, do whatever I had to do. My brain could recover before the next session. And I think that combination of full immersion for a defined manageable period, followed by rest or like not having to use it, is what unlocked it for me. Of course, the ratio in the class was also helpful. We had one teacher to 4 students. And of course, we had already started learning Spanish. We weren't starting from zero, even though he probably felt that I kind of was starting from zero, to be honest with you. Now compare that to an SFE class, Swedish for Immigrant class, where one teacher may have 20, 25, 30 students. And many of those students share a common language and naturally fall back into speaking that common language with each other the moment the teacher has moved away, even in the class, which breaks the whole immersion situation. Because our brain, like water, takes the easier road, right? Based on my experience and what I've observed from others, here are some things that can make a difference for you. Find situations where you are forced to speak Swedish, but for a defined period of time. The key words are forced and defined. Forced not by someone threatening you or anything like that, but it means you cannot fall back on another language. Defined means there's an endpoint, not all 12 hours a day. You know, it's a defined amount of time, and then you can rest. A language exchange partner is a good example of this. But choose that person carefully. Don't choose your friend who is from your country and speaks your language for that person. You can try it with them as well. But really and truly, you want somebody who will not fall back into your native language or will not fall into English. Because most foreigners coming to Sweden for work will probably also be able to speak English, even if they're coming from France or Spain, for example. They'll probably also have English. So you want to find somebody where the language you have in common is the language you are trying to learn. You know, find somebody whose first language is Arabic and they don't really speak a lot of English, but you both need to speak Swedish. Maybe you'll find that person in your language class, if it's SFE or private class. And if you can find somebody who has a slightly higher level than you, then you're doing well, because they will, you know, help you to rise as you speak. And this is not about sitting doing lessons together or doing your homework together. This is about speaking to each other. Taking a defined time to speak to each other in that language. And maybe you start with something simple like greetings, as you do in school, but try to move on and talk about different things. Don't stick to the hey, hur mår du all the time. Your brain will appreciate it. Now, one thing I found helpful when I was learning Swedish, I thought back, you know, when I was a child, how did I learn my first language? And, you know, as a kid, I watch my nephew now. People walk around and say, hey, and they point at the thing and they say the name. So I did that, not out on the street, but I did it at home. I'd go look at a chair and I go, stool. I would look at a table and say, bord. Actually, I said board because my pronunciation, you know. But to do that. And then another thing I did on top of that, because I lived alone, so it was easier, but maybe you have this opportunity as well, is I got little post-it papers, stickers, lapper. What's the word in English? Little post-it notes. Wrote the words on them with a pen and stuck it on the thing. Sometimes they fell off, but often by the time they fell off, I already knew the word, right? It's not about conscious memorization. It's that every time you see it, your brain, your eye is taking it in, your brain is processing it, even when you aren't consciously. And if you see the thing and you have the time, just look at it and say, "Bood." It will help. That's the start, of course. Um, Start simply with simple reading. Children's books. There are lots of them around, lots of interesting children's stories. It doesn't really matter if it feels embarrassing. What it matters is that your brain can process the language without being overwhelmed. And reading short bursts, rather than trying to read for 2 hours, do 15 minutes or 10 minutes at the start. And you're reading, in this cases, you're reading quietly at first to practice understanding, but then also practice your pronunciation. You know, it's an opportunity to engage with those words and feel the words in your mouth. What would be even better is if if you have kids, or you know someone who has kids and they have an audio book for this thing, you can also listen to it as you read and follow along. Your brain is taking it in, even if you're not conscious of it in the first place. Even movies. I bought a Swedish copy of Asterix and Obelix, which was fascinating. Didn't understand most of it the first few times, but it was entertaining at least, and my brain started to take that in. Something that I did actually was I found a book that I had read in English, so like a book for adults, a book that I really enjoyed, and I had read more than once actually. And I had a friend who is a native speaker, and we would sit together and work through the book only in Swedish. And this book had some interesting high-level words in it. So when we came to those words, instead of trying to explain the word in English to me, he would explain it in Swedish, and that could take a while. As I'm trying to listen to him, trying to understand, and he would say, okay, this way didn't work, so he would try a different way of explaining it, breaking it down, and that was super helpful. A little bit, it felt a bit weird because it might take an hour to read one page, but I started to understand more and understand above the simple level, because I understood what the book was about, I understood the context, so it was easier for me to engage with it, and it was interesting to me. Now, you may not have someone who has that possibility with you, but if you do, it's a powerful way to learn. You can also do it on your own. Sit with your language dictionary even, and I think a friend of mine actually did that. Sat with a dictionary. I wrote down the meaning of the words. What it means is, as you go through and you're writing the meaning of the words, then you have to go back, bearing that meaning in mind as you read through. But remember, do it for short periods of time. You don't want to sit for 12 hours or 8 hours doing this. So next point, protect your rest and protect your home language. If you move to Sweden or wherever you move to with your family's job is not to teach you the new language. Even if your spouse is from that country, their job is to be your spouse and to support you, encourage you. Not necessarily to teach you. They're not your language teacher. Your family is there because you're your family. So use your shared language at home. If you are parents from different countries, you might have the habit where one of you speaks you both speak your native language to your kids, and that's fine. And then you have a way of communicating with each other in whichever language. Continue that. You need to protect your home life because you need to have that stability for you, and they also need that stability. Let your kids speak their mother tongue, your mother tongue with you. Let your kids hear your heart in your language. I know someone who moved here and speaks Swedish to their children, a language which they can speak and they can work, but they're not comfortable. And I always think it's so sad that these children will not be able to hear their parents' heart in the native language. If you guys want to practice Swedish at home, set a specific time for it. This is when we do this. We're going to talk in Swedish after dinner for 20 minutes or something like that. Or we're going to watch a movie in Swedish. But that your whole existence is in the language that's common for you. Another thing for you to be aware of, it goes in waves. There may be days where words come and you surprise yourself. How did I even know the word for this? This is fantastic. My Swedish learning is going great. And then there will be days that you will have trouble putting a sentence together. It's just you feel like you're babbling. You're like, "Bleh, why can't the words come?" You're tripping over words that you should be able to say, not finding words for things that you should already know. And that's how it goes. Be kind to yourself. Language learning is not linear. It's like a little bit up and down. In fact, sometimes it feels like it's going in a circle. But as you are consistent and persistent, it will get better. And sometimes when it doesn't feel like it's getting better, it hasn't really stood still. It's just on the same level for a while. And then you'll find it goes up. You'll also find that those periods of you can use it more and more, not just in terms of the situations in which you have the vocabulary, but your tolerance for speaking the language, for speaking Swedish, for example, is going to grow. You might have been able to exist in Swedish for an hour and then your brain is just gone. And then you'll find that one day, man, you went a half day before you started to feel tired by it. And then one day all of a sudden, you've got a whole day speaking and listening to Swedish and you're not absolutely shattered, you know? The exhaustion may not completely go away. I'm not sure if it ever does, which is why you need to take care of yourself. As we talked about before, you really need to care for yourself so your brain has time to absorb everything and to function well. But it gets better and better. And sometimes you need to do a few things to be to not wear yourself out. What happened to me once, one Christmas, I was at my friend's place with her family, and some new family, or new to me, family members came over, and we were playing this game, you know, it whet come at lastet med, like a ship comes loaded with this salt. And then the next person says salt and butter. And I was determined that I was going to remember everything. And I did. I did not get kicked out. I think we were 3 people left when we decided to finish. But after that game, my brain was so fried. I felt absolutely shattered and distressed and irritable. And I didn't know what to do about it. So I went to where I was staying, the room I was sleeping in, and I put headphones on and I listened to white noise. And I just prayed and hoped that my brain would calm down. And it didn't. So eventually I got up and I went for a walk outside in the rain in December. Well, it wasn't pouring, but it was drizzling. It was kind of misty. And I walked. And at some point, I found a spot that was a little bit quiet and not near houses, like by a bridge. And I stood there and I screamed. And that felt better. I shouldn't have pushed myself that hard. You know, it was a little bit of pride that made me want to do it. But man, that really caused me some mental distress. And walking, the exercise, the fresh air, that helped. And so when you are going through this whole language learning journey, make sure you take care of yourself, especially after an intense language learning session. Come back from SFE, sometimes I think it's a 4-hour class with some breaks in there. Your brain might feel completely addled. And then you try to go and sit at a desk and do some performance reviews or do some work. Go and take a walk first. Lie down for 15 minutes. Take some deep breaths. Let your brain calm down. Let your body calm down. Let yourself reset. Take care of yourself. Dare to persist. Find ways to motivate yourself. Find an activity that you're already interested in and already know some of the details of it, and learn the words in Swedish or whichever language you're learning for that activity, and find times where you can do that activity in the language. If it's a sport, watch it in Swedish on TV. Learn what the word for penalty is in football or soccer, if you call it that. You know, find those times to make this language learning be less of a chore, less of a thing I just have to do it, and more of a thing that enriches your life in Sweden, in whichever country you are in. Now we've talked about these 2 big topics, the internal experience of transitioning to a new country and the human challenge of learning a language as an adult. So we come to the end of episode 2 now. Now, if you want to keep going further, there are 2 ways to do that. If you want to keep going on your own, at your own pace, episodes 3, 4, and 5 will be available shortly as a paid series. They go deeper into understanding the culture around you, knowing what good support looks like, and what thriving here can feel like for you personally. Link and more information should be below this video. Now, if something in these first 2 episodes has made you think that you want support in this, you want to talk to someone, I invite you to have that conversation with me. You may book a free discovery call using a link below, and we can talk about where you are, what's feeling hard, what's going on with you, and whether us working together makes sense at this point in time. Either way, I really want you to know that what you're experiencing is real, it matters, and you do not have to keep navigating it alone. I want to encourage you in what you're doing, to engage with it, to find your place so that you can really thrive here in Sweden. Thanks for being here. Have a great rest of the day. Bless.